every significant rock act that made its name in the 60s and the 70s. We were lucky enough to have him on the program a little less than a year ago. We actually did 2 shows with him at that time, and from that point forward, he became a friend to our people here at Later. We used to call him when we had questions about music guests. He'd provide his guidance and his point of view. We were happy to call him a friend, and what we'd like to do now is present a combination of those 2 shows during the next half hour. A look back at the career of Bill Graham.
Jefferson Airplane, John Handy, Quintet, and Sam Thomas, and Mystery Trend, and the Great Society are all playing at Fillmore Auditorium Friday, December 10th, and I would like to go if I could.
May God bless and keep you always. May your wishes all come true. May you always do for others and let others do for you. May you build a ladder to the stars, climb on every rung, and may you stay forever young. May you stay forever young.
Take me back to the beginnings, I guess it's fair to say, to the Fillmore in San Francisco in the 60s. How did things get started for you?
I was with a theater group in San Francisco, Radical Theater. We were doing street theater in the parks, at schools, and we were busted for using four-letter words in Golden Gate Park, and we needed to raise some funds for our legal defense. And through the years, I'd met some of the cinematographers and poets and musicians, jazz and rock, because we used to have parties up on the loft to let them use that space and dance groups and whatnot. We decided to have a big fundraiser in our loft, and I saw the underbelly of San Francisco come, and then it was so successful we did another fundraiser a few weeks later. And in looking for another place, the jazz critic in town at the time, Ralph Gleason, suggested a place called the Fillmore. We did the first concert at the Fillmore in San Francisco in December of '65. And then
who was on the bill?
The Warlocks, who became the Grateful Dead, and Jefferson Airplane, the Fugs, Allen Ginsberg, and Lawrence Ferlinghetti, and local artists from the area at the time, and filmmakers and slideshows and whatnot.
It's interesting you mentioned Ferlinghetti and Ginsberg. These are poets, but they routinely appeared on the bill with music acts, right?
Well, we had, Lawrence called me one time and said, Andrei Vozhneshensky's in town and nobody would rent me a hall because he's a communist, and he's only here next Wednesday night, and can you give us the Fillmore? I said, well, Jefferson Airplane is booked, but feel free to come on the show. And make a long story short, we put on a show with Jefferson Airplane and Andrei Vozhneshensky. Lawrence came out and introduced him in English, and he read his poetry, and there was some of these babushka ladies from the Russian community, and they were the rock and roll fans. And when Vozhneshensky, who was brilliant, when Vozhneshensky finished, we moved all the chairs aside and asked the elderly people to stay, and Jefferson Airplane went on. And extraordinary. Anyway, from those first benefits, the handwriting was on the wall. This was a whole society I didn't know existed. And began doing shows at the Fillmore in February of '66, a few months later.
In addition to bringing poets on and making it sort of a cross-cultural experience, you also used it as an opportunity to sort of bring younger people a little bit of a history sketch. Like you'd put Fats Domino on at a time when his career sort of was in recession, but you'd introduce a Fats Domino knowing that the Grateful Dead or whomever would carry the bill and they'd sell the place out. So you put Fats Domino on first, and these kids who came to see the Dead would find out about him.
Yeah, but Also, my musical background is pretty much on the Latin side. I'm a big Latin nut and some jazz, but not so much that much rock and roll. But as I got into the business and I met the local guys and Michael Bloomfield and Jerry Garcia, and a lot of these people would tell me about Chuck Berry and Otis Redding and the Butterfield Blues Band or the Staple Singers and the jazz bands. And knowing that the local stars of that time would fill the Fillmore, I'd bring in Miles Davis to play with the Grateful Dead. We'd bring in Woody Herman to play with The Who, and Yusef Lateef and jazz acts to play with The Doors, or jug bands. It's the best. And watching people relate to something that they didn't want to see. We had a band that played, an English band whose name will go nameless, came in the worst drum solo ever. And if there's anything I can't take in rock and roll, is the extended drum solo. It's just a train that's just moving.
Yeah.
Very few can carry a drum solo. Anyway, I was determined to eliminate that the next time, and I went to Vegas, and long story short, I convinced Buddy Rich to come out with his band to be on this next show when this band came into town. And we had an opening act, and then Buddy came on and played, and he was brilliant. And then this English man came on, but at the end of Buddy's set, I went into the headliner's dressing room and put my hand on the guy's shoulder and said, on the drummer's shoulder, and said, "Can't wait for your solo tonight, baby." And it was gone.
I'll just throw some names or some bands at you, and you give me a thought. Janis Joplin.
Ball and chain. Just a woman, an artist that you couldn't put on a record and get it. You can't bottle her. It's like the Grateful Dead. You should be there to feel her trauma, her essence, her womanness. She was very much a woman.
Was she as sad most of the time as we're told?
Later. For many years, sadness was buried in various things. But later on, when the success was there in a big way, the other side obviously wasn't there, the personal side. As she said one time, if you're in a Holiday Inn in Utah somewhere, at the end of the gigs, the guy has to go back to the Holiday Inn and go down to the bar and see what's there. What does the woman do?
Hendrix.
An extraordinary animal. And yet, he was also the first guy to lose it in the sense of some nights he wasn't even aware of it. He wouldn't play. He'd just joke with it and grind it and hump it and pick it and go behind his back. But the notes weren't better back then, but he did it because it was showbiz. And he's the best. On one particular night, though, in New York, he did the whole first show and didn't play. And he came on intermission to the box office room, and he usually never talked. He said, "What do you think?" They were recording live. And I didn't want to say anything negative, but he asked me again and again, and I asked the other people to leave the room. I said, You know, you picked it and you stuck it between your legs and you burnt it and you crashed it and you took another one, you picked it again. But schmuck, you forgot to play. And he got very, very angry, very upset. He said, well, stick around for the next show. And of course, I stayed for the second show, and it was 75, 80 minutes of the best. Never moved away from the mic, just played and sang. And at the end of the second set, he walked over to the side of the stage and said, you're satisfied now? Is that good enough for you, Jack? I said, yeah, you were great. And he went back out, and for the encore, he did 15 minutes of nothing but the crap that I asked him to cut out for the whole set. He was the best.
Foxy lady.
Possible to define.
It's easy, because I'm one of those people from the very beginning. You walk into that space, there are no strobe lights, there are no hydraulic lifts, there are no tight pants, there's no makeup. It's just them and their music. And what they do, they make you feel good. That simple. You may be into their lyrics, you may go there with people you know or you don't know, but what you also know about the audience is that they're all cousins in a sense. They're all doves, there are no hawks. And they're all there for a very simple reason. They want to be with one another, and they want to be in an area where they know that those guys are there live. They're there also. And 25 years later, as happens with me all the time, I'll be standing in the back of the room, and you'll hear some guy say, Bobby cut his hair, or Jerry changed his shirt, which is rare. They've never met them, but they're cousins, they're friends.
Oh, well, a touch of green kind of suits you anyway. And that was all I had to say. It's all right. I will get by. I will get by. I will get by. I will survive.
A cynic might say that it's not necessarily an artistic experience, it's just a hippie's nostalgia trip, and it's not on a higher level than somebody of a different generation going to see the Four Seasons, the Dovells, and the Drifters at an oldies concert.
Yeah.
I'm not saying I believe that, but I've heard that said.
In the Drifters concert, they're sitting in a seat in some 3,000 in the round theater in Podunk. The fans who go there enjoy themselves. They know they're going to enjoy themselves. It's not just sitting in the seat and saying, oh gosh, I remember that, those days. These are not some people with blue coloring in their hair. They're very much alive. And take a 35-year-old as well as a 15-year-old or a 45-year-old dead fan. How many 45, 50-year-old people do you know that whenever they want to, they know they can buy a ticket and feel very good? No drugs. Or drugs, but that's not the important thing. You can go into a space, it's like it's a hot tub, it's a public hot tub, it's a schwitz. You know, you really feel good. Well, that's what that does to a lot of people, and you know what? It's very healthy. They're also very much involved in their community, raising hundreds of thousands of dollars every year. They just passed, 10, 12 years ago, they formed an organization called the Rex Foundation. And we do these fundraisers with them. And they dispense those monies every year. We have a board of directors meeting, and I'm proud to be on that board. They just passed the $5 million mark. Just out there to community needs. They're still very real, that's what I'm saying. They're the remnant of the 60s. That's proof that there was that time, you see.
You said that Otis Redding was the single best you've ever seen. His career was that short. What was it about? I never saw him on stage.
6'3", extremely handsome, in heat. he got on stage, he was in heat. And very much a man of passion and of romance. And I never saw anyone move he moved fast, but it's those inside small moves and his pelvic gestures.
I've been loving you oh too long, and I don't want to stop now. Oh.
one more time, one more.
I'd never seen anyone to this day do that, but he had the ability to be up-tempo in a song, and before the room came back down from the energy of that, he'd hang you with a ballad. Ta-ta-ta-ta-ta-ta. I've been loving you too long. And the room just shifted to 33, then back to 78, and no one ever did that. And from song to song, he'd pace the stage and, ah, yeah, woo, ah, and the whole room is, yeah, ah. No one came close. He was so respected, the only artist in all these years, that when we talked about booking him, and I had to go to making because he didn't want to come, I had to talk to him and his manager, Phil Walden, at the time. When we told the guy on the scene in San Francisco, every headliner insisted on opening for him. The Grateful Dead opened one night, Country Joe opened another night, and Johnny Talbot and the Thangs, a great local band. But the Dead begged to open for him, and Janis was there every day before we opened the doors. When are you opening doors? I want to be there first, so I'm right up front.
Because nobody wanted to follow this guy.
Nobody. Everybody wanted to see the man at work. He was the poker man coming to town, you know. He was the man to the artistic community. And to this day, you talk to Keith Richards or to Dr. John or Dylan or Jagger. Give me your top 10 list. He doesn't miss on any list.
Time ago with the late Bill Graham. Graham was involved in the promotion of the band's last concert. It was made into a memorable movie directed by Martin Scorsese called The Last Waltz, and it brought together an all-star list of rock and roll personalities. That's where we pick up our talk with Bill Graham. There's an interesting story about Bob Dylan, who apparently was a reluctant soldier when it came to this one. How'd you convince him to do it?
We did it at Window Lane in San Francisco, but we went one step beyond, had it at a Thanksgiving dinner and served 5,000 people a full-course Thanksgiving meal, and then moved the tables away and had waltz music, and then the show went on. And Bob was in the second half, and there was an intermission, and I was asked to come to the back in a hurry, and then Robbie Robertson, the guitar player, said, "Bill, my God, Bob has changed his mind at the last minute. The wind isn't blowing in the right direction. He's changed his mind, as artists will from time to time, and he's decided he doesn't want to be filmed." So I went into Bob's room, and he didn't want to be filmed. He just changed his mind. But I knew that for Martin was filming, and Bob was the key to the film. He's Bob Dylan, the best there is. And Scorsese was somewhat beside himself. And I said, fine, no problem. And Robbie and the rest of the people, they were very much concerned. This great film crew standing by, and then the instructions went out not to film. I said, fine, just let Bob go on stage. When I went on the stage and introduced Bob, then went to one side of the stage and just went over to the guy. And they had assigned a guy to stand with the cameraman at each position. And I just went over to each one of these guys and just raised my voice rather high as I would, or become somewhat garrulous in my approach. And the guy just went free froze, and I said, "You roll," in just somewhat authoritative fashion. And then I went to each one of the positions and just did the same thing.
Did you just figure that in the end, if the concert went all right, you could talk Dylan into it later?
It's not for me to talk him into it. Bob Dylan, for me anyway, is the single greatest poet our industry has ever produced. And on a given night when he's on, just with his guitar and his words, there is no one. Why? The worst that could happen is that they would destroy the film, and he would never talk to me again. What's he going to do to me? Not play for me? That's okay. I mean, it's a privilege to present Bob Dylan anytime. But look at the situation. How can you not go for that? How many shots like that do we have at capturing magic?
May your heart always be joyful, and your song always be sung, and may you stay forever young.
Him for the many fine moments he helped provide for those of us who like rock and roll. And on a personal note, my thanks and the thanks of the entire staff go to him for his kindness toward the later program. We hope you'll be with us here tomorrow night when that chair will be occupied by B.B. King. Until then, see you later.
It's interesting how it seems as though Magic has invited all of these guys at least 2 times to the finals because he's been the only constant.
Some say that it has always been his destiny.
Magic Johnson was born to be great, and he possesses every quality that you would want in a basketball player. And if you open him up, you would find a heart as big as a room.
For it is the way he passionately embraces the game that best captures the true essence of the man they call Magic.
You know, you play this game to win, to have fun.
When we put out Decade of Decadence, the video package, those will be on that.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah, so
everything's
it'll be different. Yeah, it'll be nice.
Terrific. All right, well, we got Anarchy in the UK, the latest from Decade of Decadence, coming up in just a few minutes. But before we start our countdown,